Good evening. Welcome, everyone. My name is Katie Burrier. I am the Senior Vice President of Resource Development at United Way. On behalf of United Way, I'd like to welcome you to the Innovation Catalyst final pitch and celebration. This evening would not be possible without the generous support of many of our funders, the AEP Foundation, the Columbus Foundation, IGS Energy, and United Way of Central Ohio. Thanks to these generous funders, this year, for the first time in Columbus, Innovation Catalyst will present a total of $30,000 in seed money to tonight's organizations. Doing a lot of good in this community, it's wonderful. Also, for the first time, you will select a winner as an Audience Choice Award, and you'll hear more about that later. This evening, we will see 5 area nonprofits pitch their social impact business plans to a group of funders and business development experts. It is this panel right here who will make the hard decisions about who will receive what money and for that seed money. Our judges are we going to make them stand? Jen Bowden, Vice President, Brand and Social Impact and Cultural Initiatives for IGS. Hope Cotter, Director of Marketing, Columbus Chamber of Commerce, and a board member of United Way of Central Ohio. Thank you. Omar El Haj Musa. He's our Senior Lending Officer with IFF. Dr. Mark Lomax, Community Research and Grants Management Officer at the Columbus Foundation. Ellen Moss, President and CEO of Godman Guild. Nate Rogers, Vice President, Transformation Acceleration with Ohio Health. And Ramona Wheeler, Managing Director, Risk Management, PRIA, Coordinator with Alvis, Inc. Thank you to all of the panelists. This is a hard job that you have in front of you. These pitches represent the culmination of a 10-month process where our cohort of charitable organizations worked with the innovation experts at Cause Impact. They have explored, designed, and tested their business model, which will increase both their revenue and their mission impact. Cause Impact has been in the business of strategy, innovation, and social impact since 1998. I was born then. I'm kidding. Not true. Their Innovation Catalyst cohort model combines the team experience of a leadership development program with a business innovation process to create stronger, more impactful, and more sustainable nonprofits. In 2019, the United Way of Central Ohio and Cause Impact formed a strategic partnership to bring you the 10th Innovation Catalyst cohort. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce the instigating partner of Cause Impact, Sean McGee.
Thank you, Katie. I'll take this opportunity to thank you personally for your friendship and your support. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Cause Impact partners Matt Lewis and Tom Bishop for all their hard work on this year's Innovation Catalyst cohort and on tonight's event. As Katie said, my name is Sean McGee. I've been working on nonprofit strategy and innovation at Cause Impact for over 15 years. My partners and I have had the good fortune to work with dozens of talented leadership teams in Innovation Catalyst. Tonight, you'll be seeing the fruits of those labors from our 10th cohort of innovative nonprofits, sustainable ventures, sometimes called social enterprises, that create mission impact while they create new revenue. As Katie mentioned, you'll select the Audience Choice Award winner tonight. 100% of the proceeds from tonight's ticket sales will be awarded to the team that receives the highest number of your votes. You received 1 token at the registration table, and you can purchase additional tokens at the registration table. That's right, you can buy extra votes to support your favorite organization until about 7:50 p.m. Voting is simple. You put your token or tokens in the container corresponding to the organization you would most like to support. Please vote early and often. So Innovation Catalyst is about building capacity through strategy and innovation. to help nonprofits organizations become more financially sustainable and to create greater mission impact. I've been asked to take a few minutes tonight to share a couple of the things that I've learned and how I think about the challenge and opportunities in nonprofit innovation. I'll do my best to be brief. These days, I find we're encouraged to think of innovation as something really big, something really magical, disruptive, or revolutionary that utterly changes our culture and our world, like the space program, or the internet, the smartphone, or the self-driving car. We sometimes forget that innovation is, by definition, simply a new idea, a new product, or a new service. We forget that technology is another word for just plain know-how. We can also buy into the belief that innovation is the exclusive province of the entrepreneur, a rare mythic hero who's divinely imbued with superhuman insight, talent, and incredible luck. We can feel that innovation is out of reach, that it is incomprehensible to mere mortals, that it is reserved for the chosen few. And we would be sorely mistaken. We should remember that innovation is the happy marriage of curiosity and optimism. It's a reflection of a simple idea that there's a better way, and we can find it. We should recall that the entrepreneur is simply an instigator, somebody who starts things, who brings things about. All of us have the capacity to innovate in proportion to our curiosity and our optimism. All of us can be entrepreneurs as long as we're willing to take that first step and start something. We enhance our ability to succeed when we add in diligence and focus and persistence. We advance our cause when our experiments have unexpected results, when we make mistakes, when we trip over hidden obstacles, when we receive unexpected bounties. We amplify our impact when we join forces with others who also believe that things can change, that things should change, that things must change. Innovation is a touchstone of our common experience and a reflection of our shared humanity. I'd like to extend, you can applaud now. I'd like to extend heartfelt thanks for the generous support this work has received from United Way of Central Ohio, from the Columbus Foundation, from IGS Energy, and the AEP Foundation. I'd also like to thank our friends at United Way for organizing and hosting tonight's event, to extend thanks to Franklin University for providing such a wonderful venue for tonight's celebration of innovation. We're looking forward to our next round of Innovation Catalyst cohorts in the coming months in Columbus and elsewhere, and to continuing to learn and innovate with all of those who are curious, who are optimistic, and who are persistent in their passion for others. Before I introduce our first pitch, I'd like to share a quote from Reverend William Pollard, a Quaker clergyman, who said these words over 125 years ago. Learning and innovation go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. I'm proud to be up here tonight with such a talented and dedicated group of nonprofit leaders as they draw back the curtain on their new ideas. I think you'll agree that each one has found a better way, and our community will be the better for it. As you enjoy tonight's pitches, remember to vote early and often for the Audience Choice Award. You can provide extra support for your favorite organization by purchasing extra votes at the registration table. Don't hesitate to help your favorite come out ahead. Voting closes promptly at 7:50, so have I plugged that adequately? Great, because now I'd like to introduce our first pitch from Southside Early Learning. Let's give them a big hand.
So if you've never interacted with preschool teachers, that's what they're like all the time. Third grade reading scores, high school graduation rates, home ownership, and generational poverty. OneThread connects all of these things with returns on investment above and beyond the stock market. My name is Colin McGinnis, CEO of Southside Early Learning, and every day I get to see the short and long-term benefits of high-quality early learning with 115 of my best friends and 40 of the most amazing staff. But early childhood is in a state of crisis. 35% of teachers turn over year after year. And that turnover is having a significant impact on the readiness that our children have to be successful in kindergarten with skills like social emotional development, literacy, and math. So in Franklin County, 42% of those that are entering kindergarten are actually equipped to succeed. And we know that the key to quality and the fix that's needed to address this problem is already embedded into every program, untapped potential, because we know the key to quality is a prepared and well-compensated workforce. And we know this not just from research, but from 100 years of refining and equipping our teachers at Southside Early Learning. And the data speaks for itself. With less than 1% of turnover year after year and 100% kindergarten readiness, despite 90% of poverty that's facing our families, we equip students to be ready both in kindergarten and later in life. So we thought to ourselves, how can we help? What can we do? How can we tackle this problem of an ill-equipped workforce that turns over year after year? And we thought we could create a training and research institute to share what we've learned, test new ideas, and advance early childhood professional development. A program that we lovingly call Project Noodle, changing the way we nurture, understand, discover, and learn during the first 2,000 days. The state of Ohio mandates that every early childhood professional complete 20 hours of professional development every 2 years. And across the state of Ohio, there's nearly 73,000 teachers that are in need of 20 hours of professional development every 2 years. And when we look to our community, that's 2,000 teachers that need to be equipped with the skills that will create a high-quality learning environment. But unlike the K-12 system, there is not a uniform set of credentialing criteria mandated for early childhood professionals. There's not one single degree that's going to be the baseline that all of our workforce will be entering in with. And it's on programs, schools, and centers, regardless of how big or how much support they have, to support this workforce. The problem, though, is most professional development does not go far enough, and it fails to equip teachers in the time where it's most important, during implementation. And that's where Noodle's approach with professional development is different. Like all professional development, we'll provide the basic lecture component of the skills that are to be learned, but where things get interesting is in a one-on-one coaching model where PD cohort members will be matched with a real practicing teacher, a lot like those sitting in the back of the room tonight. And they'll be supported over 90 days, getting one-on-one mentorship and continuing to support and grow the skill that they learned during their training. And at the completion of their 90-day period, they'll be presented with a professional development plan that they can take to their administrator and get school-wide support for the skill that they've been learning. Project Noodle has 2 PD trainings that we are excited to offer this coming spring. One on classroom-level data use and decision-making, and the other on teaching emotional self-regulation skills through literacy and music. These programs have both been approved by the state of Ohio and are able to receive anywhere between 5 and 7 credit hours of those 20 that are needed every 2 years. Leveraging the infrastructure that's already built around Southside Early Learning, Project Noodle has a positive revenue flow. And over the first year, we'll see a net revenue of $105,000 with 1 full-time staff member and 10 master teachers to provide that coaching infrastructure through 24 cohorts that we'll offer over the year and bringing 3 schools into the Noodle network. That brings us a nearly 7,000 impact on our littles by creating environments that are high quality where they can go to school. But if you remember, the key to the quality is not just preparation of a workforce. We have to consider compensation as well. There's a nearly $40,000 gap between the average pre-K and kindergarten teacher. A 6-month difference in time from a societal standpoint has yielded $40,000 for similar credentialing and experience. Noodle will share a portion of its revenues, and over 4 years, we'll be able to invest nearly $300,000 into the early childhood workforce, co-opting professional development. If you are a social enterprise-aholic and you've seen a couple of these pitches before, you probably know that we are a familiar face to the circuit. This time, we are asking for $15,500 to go through an intensive train-the-trainer program, moving out of the pilot phase where we have asked for support before. But with $40,000, we'll be able to meet the expectations and benchmarks that we've set, training 384 teachers with an impact of 7,000 students over the first year and an investment of nearly $84,000 into the early childhood workforce. Noodle would not be up here tonight or have gotten this far in our planning if it wasn't for the support of organizations like the Creighton Group, Harry C. Moore's Foundation, our friends at Sea Change, the Better Business Bureau, and Brave Little Beasts. The question that I have for you tonight is, are you ready to noodle?
Questions from the panel?
Go back a couple slides to the triangle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike. Okay. Can you explain
you
the
looking at?
significance of the
Yeah.
triangle?
So when we pitched Project Noodle through Sea Change, we asked for an initial investment of $6,500 to pilot one program. We are super fortunate that we've had about $50,000 invested to be able to pilot programs now. We are asking for a $15,500 mark.
How did the 6,500 perform?
So
the
6,500.
cohort. Yeah,
Sorry.
How did the cohort perform?
Yeah, so we just went through that first cohort on the 8th of February. We started to get initial satisfaction feedback from cohort members. The feedback was, if every professional development was like this, I would be willing to invest my Saturday into coming to a PD, which is awesome, and we're super excited about that. We're still digging through to see if there's any change in behavior, which is what you would want from PD, but there hasn't been enough time to fully look through that yet. But the cohort has been piloted at this point.
Colin, nice job. My name's Nate. Seems like a really compelling problem you're chasing. I'm curious if you've had kind of one aha moment when talking to some of your customers about what they're really looking for.
Yeah. So when Project Noodle started, it was actually not PD, it was not training, and it was not research. It was going to be a data tool that programs could use to really get at what we thought were underlying problems in the field of early childhood and give them like resources to talk to families and address those. What we found was they didn't want another tool, they wanted support in how to implement tools that they already had. So we quickly diverted, and that's how we ended up with the data-informed decision-making. Sorry, I thought it was a little bit quicker than this. The data-informed decision-making training. And from there, we started to develop out and say, this model works not just for how can we use data better, how can we implement this model with this one-on-one peer coaching from a teacher that's actually still practicing, not just a practitioner that has spent 20 years in the field, is retired, and now is a trainer, but building this network and community around early childhood professionals. And from there, we started thinking through and reaching out to our stakeholders and saying, what other PD would you like to see? And things like explosive anger came up, using books and music as a tool to address trauma. We're working on a early childhood science curriculum, and how can we approach engineering concepts through building, breaking, and tinkering, and incorporating that into PD. So we quickly moved from what we thought was standard innovation, let's create this tech solution to address these big problems, and realized what we've been doing great for 100 years is what the market wanted, so let's give them that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Colin.
Hi, Jen.
Can you talk a little bit just about who are your buyers and what is your go-to-market strategy, and what may be the barriers or objections that you either have encountered or anticipate?
Yeah. Could you repeat the beginning?
Yeah, just talk about who are your buyers? Like
Yeah.
who are you targeting, and what is your go-to-market
Yep.
to get them to see the value?
Yeah, so we differentiate between customer and client. So we are tailoring our PD around the experience of an early childhood educator, realizing that they don't buy their own PD. So the PD is going to be bought through a program administrator or a academic officer type role. And it's going to be leveraging through conferences at the local and national level, leveraging the idea that in one training you can knock out nearly half of the PD that you need for a year instead of doing this piecemeal approach. There's the one and done approach to Noodle, which is standalone trainings. That Noodle member network that I mentioned on one of the slides was a way where we'll come in and create a custom PD plan for an entire program and all of their staff. So instead of trying to fit together, Nate needs this many hours and Jen needs this many, and I have to make sure they all get done before July 1st, we would be on the logistics end of things and creating a program that benefits all the teachers and building that in a way where it's a little bit cheaper and more succinct for the staff and not have to worry about things like where am I going to get the sub, do I have to close my program to get PD. So those are the two approaches that we see. Barrier standpoint is always going to be the field doesn't have a ton of money, and knowing how cyclical the process is and where funds come from, it's part of the reason that we have both that standalone offering and the network approach. So in months that we know funding isn't the highest or it's at the end of a fiscal year, we can pad a little bit the process with those that are on contract instead of selling per unit.
All right, how might or maybe how should compensation for teachers change as a result of this training?
Yeah, so from the revenue share portion of Noodle, programs that invest in are going to have the opportunity to use what comes back in a way that supports the staff. We're going to give recommendations and best practice. So at Southside, we are going to set the minimum wage chart at the minimum on our wage chart at $15 an hour and scale up from there. As a part of Noodle, we have a partnership with a research partner. It was actually announced today, so Ohio State, where we're looking at what is that increment of dollar that wages should be at that translate to change in quality in the classroom. So we're hoping that we'll be able to better address that, is it $10 on the hour? Is it $20 on the hour? Is it 50 cents on the hour? We're hoping that through that partnership, we'll be able to really hone in what should that change in compensation be, and then how can we use this as really a model and a platform to show when you make these investments and you know where the dollars are going, this is the change that we get at the classroom level.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Can you elaborate on the social justice component to this work?
Yeah, so it's a lot like two-generation caregivers when I think about the role Southside has in this. We are doing work for the good of our babies, which is obviously creating social level change and system level change that is going to compound over time. There's also a component to the workforce, which is predominantly women of color that have just been devalued and disinvested in for years, and it's time we change that. The early childhood reimbursement, not to get too far in a soapbox, but it's built off of what is the amount that we pay for early childhood, set that at a portion, a percentage, about 80%, and that's what the state decides we're going to reimburse for state subsidized care, for example. Those wages are tied to poverty, if those rates are tied to poverty wages, it's just this cycle that doesn't allow for movement. So we're hoping through Project Noodle to push that conversation forward and say, look what happens when we invest in those that should have been invested in from the beginning, and start having that really tough conversation around we can support the workforce now and the workforce of tomorrow through Noodle.
Dang, he scrolled a long way back through his deck. Okay. While my colleague collects the score sheets from the judges, we get ready to roll with our next presentation. I'd like to welcome our friends from from COSI to the stage.
Good evening. I would like to introduce Dr. Kim Keel, Senior Vice President for Experiences and Operations.
And I'd like to introduce Rita Diedrich. Rita is our Senior Director of COSI Center for Research and Evaluation. And we are from the Center of Science and Industry, better known to you as COSI.
Thanks, Kim. You know, recent numbers state that U.S. companies on average spend over $1,200 per employee per year on training, for a total, get this, of over $70 billion across U.S. companies. Yes, that's billion with a B. Studies show that people forget 50 to 70% of what they learn in those trainings after just one day. That's a huge waste of time and money, and we want to solve this problem.
Think about this. Think about something that you know how to do really, really well. Now think about how you learned to do it. My bet is you didn't learn to do that by sitting in a room watching a PowerPoint. You probably had learning that stuck with you because it was relevant, it was interesting, it was valuable to you, and it held your attention. These are examples of good education practices that are grounded in learning theory. At COSI, that's what we do, that's what we know, and that's what we're going to share with trainers and others in the learning fields.
The COSI Learning Institute is COSI's new enterprise to help make learning more effective by helping trainers know how to make learning stick. COSI is uniquely qualified to offer this solution. Having served over 37 million people since 1964, we're one of the most experienced science centers in the country. And COSI has the Center for Research and Evaluation, the only learning research center in a museum. For over 10 years, our team of scholars has been studying how people learn. We have a deep understanding of learning, and we practice it in non-school settings daily. You know, COSI is well known as a great place to take the kids, and that's true. And we are rapidly and intentionally expanding opportunities for adults. COSI is not just for kids, and COSI is not just a place. While we're proudly anchored in our beautiful facility, COSI's mission to engage, inspire, and transform lives and communities happens where we live, learn, and lounge, and now where we work.
The COSI Learning Institute will be a catalyst for effective learning. Start with the Institute's target audience, trainers.
Add COSI's expertise on learning, and
big things happen.
Learning becomes more engaging. Sometimes it's scary, but it's always amazing. Who is that guy?
How will this work? Over the next year, we'll pilot a service that we're calling Consultant Rep. At first, it's going to look like one of our typical consulting gigs. As we get to know the client, we'll co-create a customized package of experiences that wrap around their existing training programs. We won't change the content of what they learn, what the people are there to learn, but we will change how they engage in that learning. Our work together will produce better training, and learning will stick longer.
During this one-year planning phase, we'll also create 2 different types of workshops about how people learn. These workshops can be standalone, or they can become part of a client's customized wraps. This allows us to diversify the Institute's business model to include per-unit pricing as well as fee-for-service and fixed fee. Once launched, the COSI Learning Institute will be self-sustaining because we'll charge fees at market rates. Our projections show a modest start to the first year of launch with about $61,000 profit across about 15 contracts. We'll see increases in years 2 and 3 as word spreads and we refine our marketing plan. Of course, all profit from the Institute will go to COSI, will stay in COSI to help support COSI's mission. For example, a profit of $151,000 in year 3 could provide up to 8,000 COSI visits.
We'd like to take this moment to remind you that the I in COSI stands for industry, and the COSI Learning Institute is making the connection with industry stronger than ever. We're starting this project by working with the safety division of a large manufacturing plant because they've already approached us and asked us to help. We see safety training in manufacturing as a solid place to begin because of the critical nature of this type of work and because there are over 86,000 manufacturing employees right here in Central Ohio. We see good opportunities to serve industries and non-corporate sectors later in the future and will strategically expand as the Institute evolves. While marketing the Institute will begin by leveraging our reputation for high-impact learning, relationships are key for us. We've started with our business contacts here in Central Ohio and will continue with people who know us and support us already across the state. Also, during that planning phase, we'll gather evidence of success through program evaluation and use the results to message that institute in ever-widening circles.
More employees getting more out of training means a better return on training investment for companies. The benefits don't end there. Better trained employees can reduce costly mistakes, and better trained employees can lead to higher job satisfaction and less turnover. We believe that every learner can be engaged no matter what the content and no matter where the learning takes place. And better engaged learning has a better return for individuals, companies, and communities.
I hope by now that you're convinced that COSI knows its stuff because we're here to get support. COSI needs more friends, we need more advocates, and we need more funds. We're seeking $64,000 for the planning, development, and piloting phase of the Institute. The funds will cover materials and other hard costs, but it'll mostly cover labor, the time that it takes to ensure that we're really producing and testing high-quality services. This investment will allow COSI to gain a foothold in the business so we can reach impact more quickly and in better ways. We hope to see you as part of COSI's Learning Institute soon, backed by science, delivered by experts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a plan for digital distribution of any materials so that you can scale beyond the person to person?
At some point, we've talked about that. It's not in our immediate plans because one of the things we know about learning is that face-to-face is the best way. So we're starting out with it being face-to-face. After we get through our first 3 years and we pause to see how that's going, we may in fact pull that in. But that's something that we're not including in our first few years.
That's okay.
Hi there. My question is, as you've thought about this concept, is the model that I know you mentioned like you'll go in initially and just rethink how the content is introduced to the people being educated. How do you budget in terms of like how much time, what the investment is on the part of your staff to make that happen? That's very kind of high touch and custom.
Sure.
Do you want to talk about what we already do?
So I was going to start with, one of the things is that it takes on average 10 hours per hour. It takes about 10 hours of development for each hour of learning. So that was part of our calculation on what it will take during this first year. In addition to that, we have modeled working with 4 different companies over that first year. And in that, we've set out various times that it could be a small consulting project, it could be a larger consulting project, we don't know. So we've modeled out different ways, different sizes to come up with what we think that time will take.
So the other thing I would add to that is that the Center for Research and Evaluation already has a lot of experience in doing this and estimating time. So they do a lot of projects for other institutions, for other organizations, where we have to estimate how many hours is this going to take to do this. So they have a lot of experience, about 10 years of experience doing that.
When you look at the marketplace and who your competition might be, have you taken that into consideration, and what makes you different?
So I think what makes us different is that we not only use learning theory, so there are other people that will come in and say, here's what learning theory says, universities, places like that. COSI has a way of making all of that interactive and fun and hands-on and really changing not really the content, because we know that you have to teach what you have to teach, but the way that we do it is much more interactive than most places that come in and do this kind of work. They tend to be more sort of, let's sit and look at PowerPoints and let's talk about what you need to do. But we come in and we bring some really highly interactive activities to it.
So on the slide that has the Ohio map and talks about your expansion, do you already have data on how many people are currently visiting COSI that come from outside Central Ohio and Ohio in general that you know that will translate into potential for this initiative?
We do. We have data about how many people visit us. We had about 1.2 million people last year, not just coming to us, but we go out to them too. So we go out across the state. So we have relationships both through our board, our community board, but also through all these programs we do around the state that we can make connections through that.
And the Center for Research and Evaluation and the consulting work that we currently do, it is all across the country and a few international projects.
So I think, you know, there's a lot of things that when you look at a model like this, you have to think about what could possibly happen in any case, right? So there's a risk that people won't be interested. We don't think that's really a risk. We've reached out to that. I think that there are not, in terms of the way that we've started to look at this, I think our biggest risk is saying, when content comes in that's really complex, how do we make that? What do we do to make that interactive? But we have a whole team that we can pull from to help us with that, because we make science interactive every day. So I think we can minimize that risk.
I'll add one rather unusual risk is if this takes off and it's huge and it's great and we have this high demand, my worry is that we spend so much time doing this work that we back away from the research work that we do. And I never want to do that, because it's the research that we do and we continue and will continue to do in the field that will feed and constantly update what the COSI Learning Institute is about. So then that's part of the reason why, even with the growth that we've kind of modeled out, we don't want to grow just to be big. We want to do this at a rate that we can handle and we can do well, and not at the expense of the research that we do.
Hi. Do you anticipate that there might be any challenges in terms of companies equating COSI with solving their training needs? And if so, how would you overcome that challenge?
I think there's always the challenge that, I mean, we have challenges that adults don't see COSI as being relevant to them. So we have to be very direct about that and very forthright. I think the more we can give them examples, we've actually already done this work for a couple companies in the past. So the more we can give them examples, typically when we meet with somebody, we do a lot of adult team training in corporations right now. And sometimes they'll come and say, well, what does COSI do? And once we show them and we give them a taste of what it could be like, then they pretty much get it. They're like, oh, wait, that could be really fun. Yeah, all right, now we see. So I think it's about how we approach them and what we take to them.
Kim and Reed, I'm Nate. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm curious, you mentioned the possibility of reinvesting some of the margins into up to 8,000 visits Can you speak to who you might aim those 8,000 visits at in order to make the biggest impact in our community?
So we have, COSI has an access program, and that access program covers a number of things. It covers free and reduced admission. It covers free space for nonprofits. It covers free space for organizations that can't afford it. So some of that money can go into supporting that access fund, which lets a lot of different groups and individuals come into COSI.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Columbus Early Learning Centers.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. And thank you again to the sponsors who have made this possible for all of us. It's been a journey. Good evening. My name is Dr. Gina Ginn, and I am the Chief Executive Officer for Columbus Early Learning Centers, an organization founded here in Columbus in 1887 to serve the needs of early learners in a high-quality environment with affordable care. Today, we serve over 300 children per year in four locations stretching from Linden to Main Street. CELC always strives to innovate in its programming and to always be responsive to the needs of our children. And for the last 12 years, we've been working with a visiting artist to develop a program that we call the Preschool Poets. It helps our children to be able to discover and learn their thoughts, feelings, and emotions through poetry. And in fact, it's been so successful that we were followed by a documentarian for over 2 years, and that documentary has now traveled to over 40 film festivals in the nation and across the world. And today, what we're working on is to package the Preschool Poets program into a supplemental curriculum that early learning educators can use across the United States, and maybe the world. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Alexa. Alexa began her journey with Columbus Early Learning Centers when she was just 6 weeks old, but by the time she was 4, she was exhibiting some pretty significant behavioral issues that her family, as well as us, didn't really understand the root of. But we knew that she was very interested and always excited to do her poetry. And one day, that poetry is what led us to all of the answers. I'd like to show you a clip from the documentary.
Sometimes I like to play with bubbles. When I miss a bubble, it goes by itself, all the way in the sky. Sometimes me and my mommy throw snowballs at each other. Sometimes I play with my grandma. Sometimes I watch a movie with my grandma. It feels like a big explosion when I miss my grandma, when she goes to the doctor. My brain goes like the ocean. Then I feel like a big mommy sister.
Through Alexa's writing, we found that she was really struggling with her grandmother's fight with cancer. And once we knew this, we were able to surround her with all of the things that she needed to be successful once again. And today, although her grandmother is no longer with us, Alexa is at the top of her 3rd grade class at Berwick Elementary. Preschool Poets is a supplemental curriculum. Will include a half-day training with 4 accredited hours for professional development for the early child provider in attendance, 15 lessons, and judges at your table, you will see the first 3 lessons there for you to look at, 15 carefully curated books that match those lessons, and 300 blank workbooks for the children to make their masterpieces in. They love those books. This will all be marketed to early learning centers, early learning professionals, art programs, counselors, and other people who work with young children. Numerous sales opportunities already exist because of local and national conferences, as well as there's now opportunity for us to market this when we go and there are viewings for the film. The supplemental curriculum that teaches social emotional skills are highly valued in the early learning field. And like the ones you see up here, they use toys, games, and other things that are more classroom-based and more traditional in a classroom setting to help children learn their thoughts and feelings. Whereas the Preschool Poets program, however, uses a child's natural instinct to play and create, to explore their own feelings, thoughts, and emotions. And it's done with immersion. You're really in there next to those kids, learning about what it is that they're going through, helping them to write and feel engaged in an authentic conversation. Preschool Poets, it's about the bonds that are formed with the teacher and the child. And during these classroom sessions, those bonds become what are critical to children and their success and their ability to be able to learn and grow developmentally. It's also a way for them to learn resilience, and that resilience is how they combat the stress that is facing so many of our kids today. And if they can learn those skills, they will be successful through life. So through our 15-week program that we've been doing with children now for over 12 years, we found that kids are having a 1 to 2 step level increase in their assessments for social emotional development in that 15-week period. And at full implementation, the goal is for us to be able to offer this training 4 times a year to 100 teachers, which would approximately mean that about 8,000 children have access to this program each and every year. And at full implementation, we would be able to recognize $55,720 in unrestricted funds for CELC, which would help us go back into raising teacher salaries as well as providing additional supports in the classroom. So today we're asking for $60,000 in startup costs to help us with the physical printing of the curriculum, to help hire a project manager, to help with a pilot training session with 40 early learning professionals in Columbus, Southside. I feel like you're going to sign up. And engage further with research and development. So today, please invest in the Preschool Poets program to help thousands of additional young learners have access to this incredible program.
Questions?
I answered them all.
If I could figure out how to use the mic, it would be better. So one of the questions I had, I think that, this is a very strong program. It's definitely something you're passionate about and have thought a lot about. My question is that what happens after the training and there may be a teacher that's having a struggle actually being able to implement it? Is there a chance for them to come back, kind of revisit, have a mentor?
Absolutely. So in the second phase, our plan is that they would have access to our master teachers who do this program as well as the visiting artist. We've even looked at some models where they could do video conferencing, where we might be able to set up a video in their classroom so that as they're doing the program, then we can give them feedback at either, in a one-on-one session over video chat, or technology has a way of helping us do lots of things these days. So, yeah, thank you.
Hi, Gina. I'm curious about in early childhood ed, how many centers are going out and buying curriculum? Like, is this something that's a common practice that they're already accustomed to going out and buying curriculum such as this?
Yes, yeah. So buying supplemental curriculums is something that's very common, and there are lots of them that are on the market, and all of them are kind of specialized into different areas that teachers might be looking for extra and additional supports in their classrooms. So organizations are going out and spending organizational dollars on investments such as this. And I think with the way that we're priced, we're priced in a way that makes us extremely competitive because some of the other larger social emotional curriculums are actually unattainable for many early learning programs. Done. And we're done. Am I good?
Okay, thank you for your patience through that little technical adjustment pause. And now that we've got our ducks in a row, so to speak, I'd like to introduce our friends from Maryhaven.
Good evening. My name's Adam Rowan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Maryhaven, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about the Maryhaven Pharmacy, a project that will see us opening an on-site pharmacy at one of our Franklin County locations. Maryhaven is Central Ohio's oldest and most comprehensive addiction and mental health treatment organization. We operate 5 offices in the central and northern part of the state, as well as 3 offices here in Franklin County, providing inpatient and outpatient care. As you can see from this graph, we provide services all the way from school-based prevention to inpatient medical detox and everything in between. We really are an organization that prides ourselves on offering a wide array of services so we can meet our patients where they're at with the service they need when they need it. To that end, 2 years ago, we opened the Maryhaven Addiction Stabilization Center, or as we call it, MASC. MASC truly was a community response to the opiate epidemic, and it was specifically designed for patients who have recently overdosed. So what was happening was patients would overdose, go to an emergency room, they would get medically stabilized, but then have barriers and time gaps in getting from stabilization ultimately into treatment. MASC was there to change that completely. At MASC, people can come in directly from EMS or police, get medically stabilized, and move directly into the treatment phase. Of the over 3,000 people who have entered MASC since opening 2 years ago, 94% of them have gone on to additional treatment. And while all this great access has been wonderful for patients and wonderful for community response, it has provided us with some operational challenges as an organization. One of the key ones being medication and timing. We get patients 24/7, 365 at this center, and those patients come with varying levels of medical needs outside of their addiction disorders. And so the pharmacy will give us the ability to have medications at the right time for the right patient and when they need it. And I'd like to bring in my colleague Amy Cochran, who's our Director of Nursing, to give you an illustrative example of that and really kind of hit home on some of the impact for our clients.
Thank you, Adam. I'd like to share with you an all too common situation that we have that actually occurred this past weekend. We admitted a woman to the MASC facility for withdrawal from heroin. Medically speaking, she also has high blood pressure, and she takes a medication at home to manage this high blood pressure. Unfortunately, she did not bring that medication in with her, nor did we have that in our pretty small stock supply. We ordered the medication when she arrived late on Friday, and we sent the order to our pharmacy, and the next scheduled delivery would be late afternoon on Saturday. During that time, her blood pressure got too high where we were comfortable medically managing that. So we did have to send her out to the hospital. And when she was discharged from the hospital, she chose not to return to treatment. This entire situation could well have been avoided had we had an on-site pharmacy. Mary Haven at Mask serves about a little over 4,000 people annually. And our numbers indicate that approximately 10% of those individuals either choose to leave treatment or need to be sent out for medical management. We know that leaving treatment early is not associated with any positive outcome. And the overwhelming likelihood for those who leave treatment early is that they will return to active use. Unfortunately, some who do return to active use may never make it back into treatment. So the 423 patients that are affected by us not having the right medication at the right time, for them, a return to active use and our not having the medication truly is a matter of life and death. Adam?
Thanks, Amy. So why a pharmacy? Why is this the right solution for us? The reality is that this year Mary Haven's going to spend approximately $1 million on medications for our patients. By opening our own pharmacy, we get to turn those expenses into revenues for the pharmacy and ultimately return that back to Mary Haven organization. Also, it is a complementary activity. While we're a behavioral health care organization, we provide a lot more general health care to our patients than most people would think. But from a business standpoint, does it make sense? Can we make it work? We worked with outside consultants and industry leaders to take a look at the medications that we purchase so that we could forecast reimbursements and costs. And based on our estimates, we believe that in year one, we could operate this pharmacy at a 19% return or approximately $228,000 margin. This is significant for two reasons. The first being that we get to provide these medications to our patients, further our mission without putting a burden on Mary Haven. And then the second is that those margins then get to be returned to the organization and further our existing mission. We would open the pharmacy in 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, Franklin County. Phase 2, we would serve our regional clients. And then in Phase 3, we would ultimately provide pharmacy services for Mary Haven employees. We're here today to ask for $136,000 in startup funds. The $136,000 we think to get this started, those funds would go to things like consultation, fees, build out of the physical plant, security upgrades, staffing, and the purchasing of the initial stock of medications that we would need. We have been working with Cardinal Health to teach us the ins and outs of the business so that we could really learn about some of the more complicated nuances of the regulatory and compliance factors that go into running a pharmacy, as well as we plan to work with other nonprofits who are working in this space so that we can really get an understanding of the perils, the pitfalls, and the benefits of running an organization like this. We'd like to thank the sponsors of the event. This has been an outstanding experience. We've really got a chance to hone in on this idea and tackle it all the way down to the ground. And with that, I'll say thank you and take any questions you may have.
So are there any capital challenges in terms of infrastructure? Like, is the proposition of putting a pharmacy in one of your buildings a competition for bed space, as an example?
So the space that we have earmarked is only about 800, I think around 800 square feet. I'm looking at my operations director in the back of the room. But it would not take too much space, and we would basically put it on the 4th floor of our South High location where we have all of our beds on the 3rd floor. And the 4th is currently outpatient and administration, so it would be good real estate to use. But there would be capital needs to make it work.
Is the $136K what you're asking for, is that inclusive of all the costs to get this off the ground, or are there additional costs?
That's our estimate, correct.
Very follow to that,
Sure.
that estimate. So the nature of that cash flow projection, my understanding is that it's reimbursement, right?
Correct.
And so have you taken into account the timing of how long it'll take
to get
to
the
bill, reimburse,
the AR
make sure
cycle to get it back.
right.
in.
Is that inclusive of that total?
So that we did dig into that a bit deeper in the actual business plan, but yeah, we're very accustomed. We're a fee-for-service organization. We're used to billing insurance for what we do, not in the pharmacy space, but definitely in the services space. So we would anticipate that the AR will run anywhere from a 30 to 90 day period. So we would have initial operating cash flow issues in that it wouldn't be cash positive in Q1 until the cycle picked up, if that makes sense.
The patients that would be served, I would imagine a majority Medicare would cover, or would it be other types
A significant portion of our clients use private insurance, significant on Medicaid, as well as we do have some other local dollars as well.
For are you
not
anticipating
for this.
pharmacy?
No,
Right.
the pharmacy would definitely be. We would bill insurance for reimbursement. Correct.
And so, do you see any risks regarding uninsured patients?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. Which is something we deal with a lot, but yes. We have a team of people in our utilization review department who work on getting people on benefits nonstop.
Hi, Adam. Nate Rogers. You mentioned almost $250,000 in margin at a pretty healthy rate. Were there specific plans on how you might reinvest that in programs, or is that just kind of to help cover the daily operating costs of Mary Haven?
I think that it hasn't been earmarked at this point in time, but I imagine it would go directly into general operating. And then I think with the pharmacy, the question would be, does it ever have an expanded role? What we're looking at here is a closed-door pharmacy, something that you would see in a hospital or a skilled nursing facility, different than a CVS or a Walgreens or an open-door style.
What risk do you see from a standpoint of, I noticed that in the write-up in the summer that we got, it was, this would fund one pharmacist and one lab tech. And just based on my experience of dual control and processes and procedures, especially with controlled substances, how do you see that going with such a limited staff?
So we would work diligently with people who run pharmacies for a living to build out the footprint. If you ask me what my most significant risk proposition in this is, it is the compliance and the security and the risk factor. So we would do everything possible to use best practices, make sure that it's audited appropriately and all those different components are in place, internal controls to the nth degree.
Was there any special consideration given to securing the actual pharmacy because of the residents there, Mary Haven?
Yes. So the space that we would put it in would not only be locked and cameraed and secured itself, but we would be looking at putting up framing in the hallway surrounding it, so there's a key card access control to get to the space, and then on top of that, it would be secure itself. In this site, we actually, because of Mask's 24/7 operations, we have a Columbus Police Department on site 24/7, which is helpful to that.
Do you have any idea what the percentage of the startup costs are associated with securing?
Right now, for physical plant setup, I think that we have somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 earmarked.
If it can cash flow positive to this degree in the first year, what's preventing you from just doing it?
The startup capital. If we pull that out now, it's just a burden on General Mary Haven. So getting the initial funds set up, and then obviously there will be Q1 deficits running in it. So outside of the startup capital, there would be some funding disparity, but it really is just getting it off the ground. because we're going to buy stock medications and we're going to fill scripts for our patients every year no matter what.
Okay, we have time for one more question if somebody else on the panel has a question.
Sorry for so many questions.
It's okay.
Do you see the rise of pharmaceutical, the expense on pharmaceutical drugs to be an issue or a detriment in terms of access?
Is the pricing going to affect our model?
I mean, if you're going to have like uninsured patients and, you know what I mean? Like, and
So,
how do we, it's, drug prices are going up and up. And the insurance isn't covering it, and
correct.
These are people who are in tough situations. So that's what I'm just trying to say. Like, can you talk a little bit about that in a big picture perspective, not specific to this project? But.
Oh, well, I'll quickly drill in on specific. In that's one of the really soft benefits of this. I talked a lot about hard cost benefits here, but one of the really good soft benefits is the coordination of care between a pharmacist that's ours comparatively to an external pharmacist. We get coordination. We have a lot of folks who come in, and even if they have insurance, they filled their script 14 days ago and they have 14 days remaining. Even if we bill insurance, they're denying it. So a lot of times a pharmacy can take the time and effort to call that insurance company and say, this is a special case, I need you to fill it and pay for it anyway. But working with third-party vendors that we're working with now, that may not be their first thing. So we get a really strong benefit of having this be our pharmacy and operate in Maryhaven's intention. That is a big risk factor on general, pricing-wise. There's a lot of talk about prescription drug prices at a federal, state level. So where those prices go and how they move would be something we can't forecast. Thank you.
All right, so now we have reached the time when I'm going to invite our friends from Zora's House to come up and share their ideas.
All right, good evening, everyone. All right, so y'all don't know me, but I'm from the South, and in the South, when you talk to people, they talk back to you. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. My name is Elsie Johnson. I'm the founder of Zora's House, and I want you to imagine a world where you spend 95% of your time as the only person of your race or gender at work or at school or in your neighborhood. Imagine how much time you would need to spend navigating stereotypes and explaining different aspects of your identity to others. Time that you'd much rather spend writing or creating art or dreaming big dreams. For many women of color, this is easy to imagine because it happens every day. There is an invisible brain drain happening in our country, and it happens when minority and marginalized populations are forced to use valuable mental energy on the work of battling prejudice and microaggressions, instead of using that energy to create or innovate or contribute more deeply to our society. Women of color who are at the intersection of two marginalized identities, that of their race and that of their gender, are particularly impacted. And we need their leadership now more than ever. Women of color will be the majority of women in the United States in the next 30 years. And we are ambitious as hell. We are 5 to 7% more likely to graduate college than men of color, starting businesses faster than any other group. And on average, 80% of women of color seek to be promoted in their careers. And yet we lag behind in a number of indicators that gauge our ability to participate fully in the civic, economic, and cultural lives of our communities. Right here in Central Ohio, women of color have the lowest rates of home ownership. They have the lowest earnings of all full-time, year-round workers. In regards to wealth, single black women own just 2 cents to every dollar compared to all single men. And single Latina women own only 8 cents. Right here in Franklin County, 1 in 4 black women live below the poverty line. There is a clear gap in the desire of women of color to lead and contribute and their actual outcomes. But at Zora's House, we're closing that gap. Zora's House is a cooperatively run co-working space and leadership incubator created to uplift and empower women of color leaders, entrepreneurs, and change agents. From our writing circles, to our Sunday dinners, to our residential incubation program, where writers and entrepreneurs and activists can come stay on site at Zora's House for up to 5 days while they incubate a meaningful project. We empower women of color, not just to pursue their own goals, but to become leaders in their fields and communities with bigger voices to advocate for others. At Zora's House, creating leadership opportunities for women of color is baked into our DNA. Our co-working space utilizes a cooperative model where members are able to contribute directly to the leadership and governance of the organization. From a business perspective, working hand in hand with our target customers allows us to quickly identify needs and trends as they emerge and pivot as necessary. And from a social change perspective, we are one of very few organizations created by, shaped by, and led by the people who are actually being served, allowing us to be much more effective with our programs and to create leadership opportunities for our customers. And demand for our work is clear. In the 18 months since we've launched, over 1,200 individuals across 5 states have visited our space and attended our programs. In 2018, we ran the largest training of black birth workers in the Midwest, and we've hosted 4 women of color-owned markets, generating $75,000 in revenue for local women of color artisans and entrepreneurs. And everything that we've done thus far, including operating our space 6 days a week in order to better serve our members and our community, has been done with a small team of volunteers and 0 full-time staff people. In fact, in my illustrious tenure as Zora's House founder and primary growth engine, I've maintained a full-time job and given birth twice. Our membership grew 30% in the last 6 months, and we successfully piloted 2 revenue-generating programs that we do not have the capacity to actually launch. Our demand is outgrowing our capacity to deliver, and we need your support to help create the infrastructure to support our growth. We're asking for $150,000 in order to be able to hire 2 full-time staff people, one of which would be an executive director, to help lead and grow this work. Last year, we grossed $80,000 with a small team of volunteers and a part-time house manager, who's sitting right there in the audience. This year, we plan to double those numbers, and at our current rate of growth, we aim to be profitable in the next, by our 3rd year in operation. But with your investment, not only would we be able to immediately launch those programs and grow our impact by a 1/3, but we'd be able to cut our path to profitability from 3 years down to 18 months, at which point our model would be self-sustaining and we'd begin to reinvest in the growth of Zora's House. Now, if you're wondering what all this looks like or why it even matters, let me introduce you to my friend Indigo. Indigo is an artist who became a member of Zora's House in the spring of 2019. She was really interested in exploring the field of art therapy through her lens as a Native American woman. And through our Big Ideas Lab, not only was Indigo able to successfully pilot her first grief workshop utilizing both art therapy and shamanic practices, But she gained the confidence and support that she needed to apply to a master's program in social work with an emphasis in art education. That's the magic of Zora's House. We need more indigos. And 90% of our program participants say that they would recommend Zora's House to a friend. And 82% of our members say that a relationship formed at Zora's House has actually helped them in their personal or professional life in the last 12 months. And we're just getting started. I forgot the slide was. We're just getting started. Our Columbus location is the first in what will be a national network of spaces created by and for women of color and centering our leadership and our development. In every community where we operate, our goal is to create a generative pipeline of women of color leaders, entrepreneurs, and change agents. We believe that women of color have the courage, the creativity, and the desire to change our world for the better. We'd like to help them do it. And we welcome each and every one of you to join us tonight on our mission. Thank you.
What has been your membership recruitment in Hollow so far? Is that the same strategy you use moving forward?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I would say that our first 18 months intentionally have been us piloting this concept, really understanding both what was needed in our community, what our members actually wanted, and how the words that they use to describe the space. So a big piece of what we've been doing, probably for like the last 9 to 12 months, has been collecting their ideas of what this space is and what it means for them. And the bulk of our recruitment has been word of mouth. As you saw, we have a very lean team with a very lean budget. And so we actually have spent probably $500 on advertising since we started. Our goal going forward, however, is to codify that language and to create a marketing plan that enhances kind of the word of mouth, thinking about how we can actively engage those folks who are advocates for us to bring in more members in a more formal capacity. And so that's going to be a big piece of what we can do if we actually have staff that are able to kind of look at these things and start to implement some of that.
I have many questions, but I'm trying to just to be like upfront, I'm familiar with LC.
Yeah, we friends.
From the neighborhood, in the hood, I live in the same neighborhood. And I'm going to put this out there because I just would like all the other journalists to know about this, but what lessons do you think you have learned from your journey? And then more specifically, the construction phase and lessons learned from that aspect of Zora's House.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So Zora's House is actually located in the Wyland Park neighborhood of Columbus. And in 2017, well, I should say in 2016, when I told my husband that I had this crazy idea of starting a co-working space and he didn't divorce me, we then continued the conversation about what that would look like. And ultimately, we knew that we wanted to actually be in a neighborhood in Columbus. We chose Wyland Park because it is a historically African-American neighborhood that there's a lot of stuff going on there in terms of trying to develop this mixed income community. And we thought Zora's House would be a really good asset. So we actually purchased a vacant lot in 2017 and we built Zora's House from the ground up. And so that process in and of itself, it taught us a lot that I think will inform the work that we do as we expand to other communities. But more specifically, it was more about how do you really get into a community and again, understand and allow the folks who are surrounding you, who are a part of the work that you're doing, to really drive and support, what's going on. So for us, we are relatively new to the neighborhood, so that meant really being able to understand our neighbors, their concerns, and be able to bring them into the vision of Zora's House. And ultimately, they really bought in as well because they believed that Zora's House was going to be beneficial to the community. But I think the process of purchasing land, building in a neighborhood, working with neighbors, really informed what later on became our model of making decisions in community with the folks who are actually going to be affected by them.
One more follow-up question about, I'm not clear on the level of capacity percentage-wise you're at now, and with this, additional marketing dollars and getting the word out, where you think you can be. So, percentage-wise, numbers-wise, how many people are you serving now, and how many do you have the capacity to add?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So we have about 60 members right now. Our capacity in the space that we're in right now is about 300 members on an ongoing basis. But one of the things that's really important when you look at those numbers and we talk about what would happen if we're able to bring on additional staff is that we also have fee-for-service programs that we have been piloting that we have not been able to launch. So not only do we have capacity in terms of being able to recruit members, and some of that will go with being able to add a marketing budget and somebody who's kind of dedicated to doing that work, as opposed to the very organic growth that's happened. But the other thing to consider is that we also have, and will expand our capacity to have fee-for-service programs that we've already piloted, and there's already been a good amount of interest in them. We just don't have the capacity to run them right now, and that will also bring in additional revenue.
Hi, so a statement and a question.
Okay.
Statement is, this is awesome work and you're amazing. My question is, will you be one of the resources funded, because I don't want you to burn out, because you're doing a lot.
Indeed I am,
Okay,
and indeed I will be. So when I think about, the roles that would be filled, one of the primary roles that we need is an executive director. And I've been doing that work, doing the work of an executive director in every spare moment that I have for the past several years. But really, we're at a point now where we need to go all in. And in order to do that, we need leadership, and I need to be able to dedicate my full amount of time. So yes, if we are funded, that would mean that I will actually be able to do this full time, and who knows what the hell I can do in a year.
thank you. Awesome.
Two more questions.
Have you all looked at the ways that you're actually measuring the economic empowerment that is made possible by Zora's House in terms of earning potential or women becoming, being able to actually take that next step? A lot of the measures that you talked about in terms of when you frame the problem.
So it's interesting that you asked that, because metrics are incredibly important, and there's a piece of the work that we do that's a little bit hard to measure, which is why I like to say the magic of Zora's House. And when I say that, what I really mean is that what we do at Zora's House is we try to lessen the gap between what women of color desire to do and what they actually first feel like they can accomplish and then actually go on to accomplish. So that first step is one of the things that most programs don't address, is this idea of like, you have these desires, how much agency do you really feel like you have to be able to achieve these things? And so our first step at Zora's House is to measure, how do we get people closer to believing that they can actually do these things and they're worth these things? And then our second step is, from there, what needs to happen, what inputs do we pour into our community, and then what do we get out in terms of the actual results and products that is created. And so to answer your question, we've been thinking a lot about metrics. Again, we don't right now have the capacity to do in-depth measuring, but that actually is one of the first things that we want to think and talk more about. And we welcome anyone in the audience who's really good at metrics to come talk to us and volunteer and hang out with us, because we recognize that what we are going to, part of what we're going to have to measure is something that most organizations don't measure, and that's really like the belief that people have in what they are actually able to do and their self-actualization. And so figuring it out what those metrics are is going to be a challenge, but we're up for it.
Cool. And really quickly, that membership of 60, you said, is represented by how many women of color own businesses?
That's a really good question, and I don't have the specific numbers for you right now. I could get them, and we definitely have them in our database. One thing that I will point out though is when we say that we are a co-working space, one of the things that immediately jumps to folks' minds is that we are filled with entrepreneurs, which is true to an extent. We have a lot of solopreneurs, folks who are side hustlers, who have full-time jobs and are trying to launch gigs. But the interesting thing about Zora's House, and again, one of the reasons why it's hard for us to measure our output, is because it's not just about economics. We have writers who are writing novels. We have grad students who are trying to graduate from a predominantly white university. We have teachers who have a passion project that they're trying to launch. And so when we think about what the members who come into our space do, although we do have entrepreneurs and that's a piece of what we do, we really think about what does it mean for women of color to do the work that they are most passionate about in this world. And so I'll actually leave you with a quote that is one of my favorites, and it kind of grounds the way that we think about work at Zora's House. And that quote is, now it's one of my favorites and I can't remember who's, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, sorry, Mom Brady is his name. And he said, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive, and we want to help women of color come alive."
I need that clicker. Thank you, sir. All right, so let's have one more big round of applause for all of them. If everyone can remain seated, I'm going to lead our judges to a secret undisclosed location outside the auditorium, where we're going to compare notes and make some decisions around seat number awards tonight. While we're doing this, we assembled a panel of experts to discuss social innovation up here on the stage. And we'll make one exception to that standing seated rule. If you'd like to place extra votes for your audience choice favorite organization tonight, the registration table is just outside this door. Those are only $10 each. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce the facilitating partner of Cause Impact, Tom Bishop, who will moderate our discussion.
I'd ask our panel to come on stage on the table amendment as we said here, so please relax a little. Vote early, vote often. 7:50 is no longer the end time. It's certainly 7:30. You have 10 minutes to make your vote. You've got 10 minutes. Make your vote. At 7:40, we will close the panel and start tabulating. But our panelists have come on.
And Sean took my microphone. Oh, I got it.
Oh, there we go. Can you all hear me? Good, good. So we are privileged tonight to have a panel of experts in social enterprise and social enterprise development. With us this evening are Carter Stewart, Managing Director at the Draper Richard Kaplan Foundation, Paul Haynes, CEO with Freedom a la carte, and Matthew Goldstein, CEO, not at Freedom a la carte. I really botched that slide. Ouch, man.
Congrats on the new job.
I made it almost through the whole show. So you're out, right? So Matthew is the CEO at BESA. So for those of you not familiar with them. BESA fans in the audience. So we're going to talk about a few things tonight, but I first want our panel to talk about themselves. So I'm going to start down here with Carter. Just give us your brief bio.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Very nice to be here. I have been at the DRK Foundation for about 3.5 years. Before that, I was a lawyer. Practiced law for 20 years and spent half of my time as a lawyer as a prosecutor, and felt that most of the people we prosecuted came from broken systems, whether it was broken educational systems, broken mental health, broken housing, broken employment. And I really wanted to feel like I was making a difference and being proactive in change as opposed to just reacting to people's bad decisions. And so that's how I landed at Draper Richard Kaplan, and we fund early stage nonprofits around the world looking for innovation and social entrepreneurs.
Hi. So I'm Paula, if you didn't understand which one I was. And I started at Freedom a la carte. I started leading the organization in 2016, but actually started as a volunteer in 2013. And just dove in and got involved, ended up launching a fundraising event for them called Eat Up Columbus on April 25th is our next event if you want to attend. And then was on the board, stepped off the board to be the interim director because we had a role that needed to be filled, and decided to close our marketing business and stick around and continue to do that. I just have a passion for this work and this organization, and excited to see it forward.
Real quick, Paula, there may be one person in the audience who doesn't know who Freedom a la carte is.
Yep. So Freedom a la carte is a social enterprise that works with survivors of human trafficking, sex trafficking in specific. And we operate a catering business to offer job skills and then help the women transition into jobs in the community where they can earn a living wage. And then we'll be opening a cafe downtown in Q3 of this year.
Shameless plug. They were one of our members of our cohort last time around, and we launched that business plan for that through that cohort. So, and tasty eats too if you haven't had them. Matthew.
Hi, my name is Matthew Goldstein. I work at BESA. Fun fact, the tie I have there is the same tie I have on tonight. Anyways, I'm the CEO, founder and CEO of BESA. We're a Columbus-based nonprofit, and our whole goal is really around civic engagement, how to connect people like you and me and businesses to the causes that matter most in our community, like Freedom a la carte. So we work with 100+ nonprofits, mostly in Columbus, but also in other states, to help amplify their good work. We bring thousands of volunteers to those nonprofits. We're up to about 45,000 volunteers that have given back over 100,000 hours and about $13 million of impact across communities like Columbus, mostly in Columbus, but again across the United States. And my background is, I'm from Philadelphia. I say water, not water. And I came here for Ohio State and stayed. I'm a former retailer, worked at Abercrombie & Fitch, and at 27, I realized that wasn't the right place for me, and I started thinking about what is the right place. I started to volunteer on a suicide hotline on Saturday mornings, and those few hours in the hotline were some of the most rewarding hours of my entire week, and so I wanted more of that. I got more engaged in the community. And then I got my coworkers at Abercrombie involved, and that's when this light bulb went off, that I'm working with really smart, really talented people that want to give back, they're not sure how to do it, and that's BESA.
Awesome. Brief on me, just because it's going to explain what I'm going to do next. I spent about 30 years in nonprofits, about 17 years of that as a chief executive. And one of the things I really hated to hear was that well-meaning volunteer or benefactor would come in the office and say, you know, you need to act more like a business. And in the back of my head, I was like, one, we are a business. Two, it's a highly specialized business. It takes a particular type of training. And three, in our case, mission follows money instead of the other way around, money following mission. Now in social enterprise, the cool thing about that is we balance those two. So what I really want to talk to you guys about tonight is innovation, making change in nonprofits, the type of innovation we've seen on the stage tonight, and your guys' thoughts on the importance of innovation in nonprofits. So I'm going to start with Paula this time. What does innovation mean to you in the nonprofit space?
I think innovation means taking risks and maybe doing something that you haven't done before. And I think the thing that has made us successful is really looking at, you know, we work with sex trafficking survivors, and there's not a lot of other organizations to look at of how that's been done. And so I think what we've been able to do is just respond to the survivors. It's very survivor-led, and learn from what their needs are and how can we best serve those needs, and do it with an approach of empowering survivors and not enabling, and balancing that together. And I think just thinking differently and being open to new ideas.
How about you, Matthew?
For me, innovation is thinking differently. I think all of us want to be engaged in our community, but sometimes it's hard to figure out how to do that in our busy lives. And so for BESA, innovation is around this idea of how to make it as easy as possible for someone to sign up to volunteer, to show up, to have this incredible experience around giving back that they can't get anywhere else. And so it's not that they're just volunteering once, but it's the beginning of this journey that they're going deeper and deeper into their community and understanding the needs that are out there and how they can address them. Just to give you a quick example, every year now for Valentine's Day, probably all of us here can go wherever we want, or almost anywhere we want. I used to go to the Top Steakhouse in Bexley, and one year we decided, why not, me and my partner, why not go to the Van Buren shelter and serve dinner to the families there on Valentine's Day? And that turned into this entire project that took dozens of volunteers. Jenny's Ice Cream comes with ice cream. Stephen Cox Flowers comes with about 300 to 400 roses on Valentine's Day, charging us 25 cents each for a rose. I don't know if you guys bought roses last week, but there are a lot more on Valentine's Day than 25 cents. And Harmony Project comes with music. And it's this idea of not just giving love and wrapping these families in a blanket of love on Valentine's Day, but how to connect community members, volunteers to that work, and hopefully engaging them on a deep personal level that, again, begins that journey with volunteerism and civic engagement.
Awesome, awesome. Carter?
It's tough to add to that. I think everything that was said is absolutely right. Taking risk, innovation is taking risk. It's about doing things differently. It's about doing it with passion. And innovation is actually key to our criteria. When we look at organizations that we're going to fund, we look for early stage, generally younger than 5 years. We look for founder-led organizations, but we look for innovation. We're not going to fund an organization that is doing something that everybody else is doing just a little bit better. We want to find folks who are doing it differently, that have the opportunity to scale and disrupt the system within which they're operating. And that goes to a point that I've talked to other people about before, which is, are there too many nonprofits in the world? And my view is no, there aren't. And we know there aren't because we still have so many of the same problems that have been persistent in our communities for hundreds of years. And so if we had enough nonprofits that were effective 100%, then we wouldn't have those problems. So there are obviously wonderful nonprofits doing great things, but we need more that have innovation coming up to help solve some of these intractable problems.
Awesome. I'm going to come right back to you for this, Carter, because you and I had a great conversation about this already. Why is it important for nonprofits to innovate?
For some of the reasons that we just talked about, which is that the traditional ways have not worked. Also, something that was talked about before, which is what you said, people are coming in and saying you have to operate like a business. which may or may not be accurate, but there's a changing dynamic in grantors, in funders. They're more like my organization, which is focused on impact and measuring impact. And sometimes that impact is intangible. Sometimes you know something is working, and it does take some creativity to figure out this is how we can show it's working, even when it doesn't necessarily come down to numbers. But the successful nonprofits respond to today's environment in innovative ways, either through their model, their messaging, or their measurement.
Matthew? Why is it important for nonprofits to innovate?
So,
Just a second.
I think it's for all the reasons that we've talked about. One of the biggest ones to me is education, that if you're not in the nonprofit world, it's easy to make assumptions of how a nonprofit functions. And so there's a huge opportunity for nonprofits to help educate the broader community about the important role nonprofits play in our community to affect and impact some really big problems. And so you're not going to be able to address that unless you're getting innovative in how you are communicating your message and telling your story of impact, not just for your nonprofit, but on a broader level. To give you an example, a question I get a lot is, you're a nonprofit, how do you make money, right? And why is money important? I'm in it 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And so to me, it's like, well, duh, of course, this is how you do it. But for people who are in the corporate world or in a different sector, there's an opportunity for us to better educate those folks on how we are running like a business. Because to your point, we are a business.
Give that back to Paula. I want to step in on that before I go to you real quick, Paula, and the same thing. But I always think of some words that many of you will know. Hot Chicken Takeover here in town, fabulous chicken, fabulous banana pudding. It's a social enterprise that works with people moving from the prison population to public. And Joe DeLoss has a kind of famous words that I really like, and that is that we often emphasize mission, mission, mission with nonprofits, but there is no mission without the money. And so that's kind of the beauty of social enterprise. The two are tied together, they grow together, they don't overshadow each other. And I'm sorry, go back to you, Paula.
Okay, well, that was kind of my answer,
Oh,
so they just took it.
We can talk about Joe?
I was just going to say sustainability, which I think is kind of the same thing. That honestly, when first attracted me to Freedom a la carte was their model of, number one, workforce development. Like, yes, let's give these women a job so they can become self-sufficient. I thought no one else at the time was really in that arena. And then the workforce development piece of how brilliant to sustain a nonprofit organization by operating a business that's going to feed back in to the nonprofit. And as that's developed, I think more and more people are getting in that space. And as nonprofits, it's like a business. You're competing for dollars with other nonprofits, and you're competing for volunteers, and you're competing for board members, and you have to stay innovative. So I think that's how I would relate the two.
Okay. Let's start with Matthew for this one. So risk. Risk is inherent to business. Part of the whole business development process, the job is to mitigate risk. That's the main ending thing you want to have. You want to have a business that has the best chance of success possible. Talk about risks that you guys took with BESA and how that relates to your work now.
Yeah, real quick on the Joe story, I think yours was the PG version. The other one is, yes, the mission is important, but if you have a shitty product, you're never going to make the money. And to focus on the product and the service, and then the mission, because that's the only way you're going to amplify the impact. In terms of risk, I think one of our biggest risks, so BESA, this is our 8th year in existence. And when we started, year one, our budget was $24,000. I was just telling someone this earlier. My salary was $200 a month, so $2,400 of the $24,000 or so. And I think the biggest risk was, as we grew, not to hold on to those dollars, but to start spending those dollars on hiring staff so that we could amplify our impact. Having a staff is one of the payroll is one of the scariest things, because now you are responsible for more people than just yourself. It's no longer a hobby, it is a job. And so to me, that is the biggest risk, and I think about that all the time. This year, our budget is a little over $1 million. We have a staff of about 10, and still a small but mighty staff. And to me, it's always, okay, what are the investments we're going to make sure that we not only continue to be sustainable, but that we can do right by our employees? And that means, yes, salary, but that also means benefits, and professional development, and all those other things that take investment, but hopefully will pay off in the long run.
Awesome. Paula? Me too. Risk.
So, like how we're
Well, how you experienced it, how you dealt with it, why it's important to understand.
Well, I think we take lots of risks, and I think that's what makes you innovative, is that you're willing to take the risks. I think the key is to know when to pivot. And so one example for us was we had this idea for a long time about opening a cafe, and the opportunity came along, and I think what we've learned is not every opportunity is the right opportunity to take, but we had the opportunity to open a small cafe in one of the opening local Columbus Metropolitan libraries. And we thought, this is a great opportunity to test our model. And we jumped on it, and we realized it wasn't a great opportunity. There wasn't enough traffic in the library. We weren't able to staff our women in the library because they weren't confident enough and prepared to operate on their own without a supervisor or someone there, and we couldn't afford two. We couldn't even afford one person. So we were paying for this cafe that was losing money, and we were employing people that weren't part of our mission. So we had to exit, right? And we had a contract that we had to break, which as a business person, you don't want to do that, but we had to do that. And it was received well. The library understood this was not a good fit and let us out. But you take those risks, but you also have to know when to pivot and to say, hey, this isn't right. But we learned a lot from that experience, and now it's shaped where we needed to go and where we're going now.
And that's actually a perfect segue. So innovation, by definition, is risky. You're trying something new. So everybody who was on the stage before presenting their ideas for something new, they're taking risks. From a funder's perspective, we're a venture philanthropy. We, on average, the age of the organization that we fund is 18 months. So there's not a long track record of success for those organizations. So we're taking a risk with such young organizations. But what we want to see is what you just mentioned, Paula, which is iteration. Trying and piloting an idea, seeing how it works. And with failure, you pivot and you try something else, and then you pilot that and see if that works. And when we see organizations under great leadership who've gone through that process of iteration, of failure, and finding the right path, we know it's still going to be risky to fund them because they're so young, but we think that's the right mindset to have, of taking the risk, learning from failure, and making a better path.
And one of the things that we've learned, we have people go through our cohort process, and it's all business development and leadership. And some of them learn along the way that A, either their organization isn't as ready as they thought they were, or B, this idea isn't going to fly, and they're going to have to come back with a new idea. And that's business development. That's doing the research, that's testing it, that's talking to your customers again and again and again and again. Talk about the two peoples you serve. I'm going to start with Paula on this, because you serve customers and you serve. Tell me about the balance of that.
Wow, I don't know what to say about that, actually. So we serve our customers, and those are the people, businesses typically, that are buying our catering food. And then we serve the clients. And the only thing I can say on that is keeping that balance, but also knowing that, we are a nonprofit, so our business exists because we we have a mission to serve. And so we have used that mission to shape what our product is. And we've learned over the years, talking about pivoting still, that we needed to narrow in our focus so that what our product, we knew, like we talked about before, our product has to be great. Like it needs to be really exceptional food. But you can't, in a training program, have a humongous menu. So we learned to really develop a niche and not be all things to all people. So a few years ago, we decided we are a drop-off catering business. We don't do weddings. We just took dinner off of our menu this year, so we don't do dinner, but we do an excellent breakfast. We do the best box lunch in the city, and we do a nice, and we do a nice heavy appetizers for like a cocktail party. And so I think just realizing that you have these two people to serve and figuring out what that balance is between the customer and our clients.
Now, Carter, you've got a different duality. You have the funders who fund your organization, and then you have the nonprofits that you serve. So tell us about that.
So the tension there is we're funded by other foundations and wealthy individuals who like our business model but don't have the wherewithal to do it themselves. When we fund an organization, we actually take a board seat. So we fund them for 3 years, we sit on the board for 3 years, and we do everything we can to be a thought partner to the executive director, to the board, to help them scale, help them grow, do it very intensely. And at the end of the 3 years, we move on. We never re-up after 3 years. So we take a literal hand in the management of the organization and try to be the best support we can be. The tension is that our funders expect results. They are the ones who are pushing for impact, impact, impact. So we develop, before we fund anybody, a set of milestones and metrics to agree on what we think the impact is going to be in year 1, year 2, year 3, and we use that to show our investors what their money is doing, and that there's not a return. Though we do fund some social enterprises, most are nonprofit, there's not a financial return, it's the impact return. So that's our struggle to make sure that we are making sure that we develop accurate and positive, I think, milestones and metrics, and that we're showing the funders that we are actually being successful in helping these fantastic organizations grow.
Now, Matthew, you've got kind of a different thing going on. You're serving the same people, but at 2 different levels. You have to interest the corporate partner, and then you're working with the volunteers. So talk about that.
And also the nonprofits.
Oh.
So we see those as our 3 primary stakeholders. And we've actually had a lot of conversations about who is our customer. With BESA, social enterprise is a big part of what we do. 55% of our revenue last year was earned income. That's companies like Big Lots or Safe Light or L Brands paying us to manage their philanthropy program, or we have technology that they can manage it on their own. So they're a big customer as well. But what we've realized is it's the volunteer who is our primary customer. Because if we're able to create this incredible experience around giving back for the volunteer, then all of a sudden the nonprofit is getting access to resources that they might not have had before. That's coming over again, again, and again. So it's amplifying the resources and the impact and the exposure for the nonprofit. But then also that volunteer might work at a company. And so then they're going back to the company to tell the company about this experience they had through BESA. As an example, Express was one of our first partners, and there were a couple of volunteers that were Express employees that volunteered through BESA. They went back to the company. The next thing I know is the executive in charge of philanthropy is calling me in for a meeting, and they built a partnership with BESA, and they are to this day one of our biggest partners in this work. And so there's that balance, I guess you could say, between the volunteer, the nonprofit, and the corporate partner, but we always lead with the volunteer.
Awesome. Okay. What are the obstacles, I'm going to start with you, Matthew, that you run, that nonprofits, and you in particular, but speak in general as well, that nonprofits run into in trying to innovate?
I think one of the biggest ones is what Carter was talking about, which is we want to show impact. We want to demonstrate incredible impact in the communities that we serve. But then also you have to run the day-to-day operations, and as a nonprofit in a tight labor market, sometimes it's hard to compete and attract the talent we need to create the impact that we want to create. And so Something that one of our funders said to me once was, what I like about BESA is that you guys dream big and then you act. And it's sometimes hard to dream big because the day-to-day work, where most nonprofits have limited resources with a big, ambitious mission. And so there's that balance or that tension between those two that you're constantly trying to walk that tightrope.
Carter?
The biggest obstacles I see with the grantees that we fund comes in the structure, the growth of the organization. So usually there's one executive director, sometimes there's 2 people, maybe 3 people, and what our message is to the organization can be, in order to work more effectively, you need to hire a chief operating officer to handle the internal while you go external and do fundraising and be the vision person. And they say, that's great. I'd love to hire a COO, but we don't have the money. And so it becomes a circular thing. In order to get the money, you need the freedom to go out, so you need a COO. So that tension between building your team and getting the funding to build your team is a constant one. And that's where risk can come in. Understanding that you may not have funding for the next 2 years, but if you have enough funding to provide a runway, that might be the time to start hiring internally so you can focus more on fundraising and sustainability.
Paula?
You took my answer. Like, I really don't have
So we're all
anything to-
cribbing off you tonight, is that what
Yeah,
it is?
it is. Going third is really hard, yeah.
Okay. How can nonprofits go about innovating? Are there processes? Are there things they should be doing that will make them more innovative? Let's start with Carter because he's tapping his chin like he's got something there.
I wish I had a magic answer. I think getting feedback from the people you're serving and figuring out what they want and what you're delivering and making sure that that's a match. I think making sure that you are working with people and have people on your team, on your board who are part of the population you're serving. So those who are proximate to the problem can be proximate to the solution. I think those types of conversations are the only way you can come up with the best ideas to innovate and try new things. And then just to have a learning mentality, to realize that no matter how great your program is, how great your model is, there could be things that could be improved upon, and making sure that you bring that mentality into all conversations.
Paula?
It's hard to expand on too. I agree. I think it's more about addressing the need, like really opening your mind up and being open to the need and exploring new ways to address the need. And it's about the team and really collaborating, not just with the team within your organization, but we've brought in lots of advisors to look. So many times I've presented to funders and they've challenged us to innovate and think of things in a new way. So I think just being open to building that team is a way to help.
Matthew?
A couple quick things. One, I think what Carter said about research is so important, to talk to the people that the program or the service is going to impact. It's something that seems so simple, but I can't tell you how many times I see organizations, including my own at different points, skip that important step because you get so much great, valuable feedback. And I would say the other thing is not to come at this work from a place of fear or of scarcity, that I think a lot of times, or there are times that nonprofits think about, we have to fundraise this much money. And if you're starting with that this relationship is based on how much money I can get out of it, rather than what is the opportunity of the impact that we can have together, those types of conversations are the ones that excite me and allow us, BESA, to do some really cool work with partners, because that's the other thing. We can't do it in a silo. We've got to do it with our partners. And that's why it's so important for us to partner with organizations like Freedom a la carte to support the great work they're doing and to get more people involved in the great work that they're doing.
Awesome. I'll start with Paula on this one. What message about innovation would you want to leave our audience with tonight?
I would say just challenge yourself and to really look outside the box at what needs to be done in the community and to get input from other people. I think another thing that has helped us is to put ourselves in the shoes of the customer and really take a look at that and think about, you know, how am I receiving this and how can we improve this as a product instead of being stuck in the mindset of continuing to repeat what you've been doing, but to really take a step back and look at, hey, here's the product. How can we improve this? What else do we need? So.
Carter.
Yeah, I'm going to follow on what you said this time. I think collaboration is key. First of all, you all wouldn't be here if you didn't care about innovation, if it wasn't on top of mind. So you obviously have the right mindset just by being in the room. But the collaboration piece, the partnership piece is critical, and I wish funders modeled it in an effective way, and unfortunately we don't. I've been in the foundation world for 3.5 years now, and I'm shocked by how little collaboration there is among funders who care about the same issues, that actually there can be some major failures to work together to leverage resources to really make a difference. So we're trying to figure it out on our side too, but that collaboration piece, that partnership piece, I think that is absolutely key.
I love what Paula said about being curious. To be with someone and to always want to be in this mode of wanting to learn. I think the other piece to that I've learned recently is this idea of being present, that so many of us, and I'll just speak for myself, so busy, right? There's meetings and there's work, and sometimes it's easy not to be present with the people right in front of you, or for me not to be present with the people in front of me. And I've been more intentional at being present because then that unlocks so many opportunities that I wasn't even aware of, connections, relationships, and new collaboration that will advance the work that is so important to me and my team at BESA.
Awesome. I want to thank all three of you for being here this evening. Give them a big hand, everybody. Carter Stewart, Paula Haynes, Matthew Goldstein. I have gotten the cue that the judges have percolated and they are about ready to provide us with what they've learned. Ask you to remain seated while I flip the stage real quick, and we'll get in here and get this party rolling. I'll take it. Thank you.
And now, the moment you've been waiting for. It's my pleasure to bring to the stage one of our judges from tonight, Hope Cotter, Director of Marketing at the Columbus Chamber of Commerce and a board member at United Way of Central Ohio. Let's have a big hand for Hope. So we had quite the discussion in the judges' room. You could really throw a punch.
Chair, table, whatever.
Yeah, well, but you know, I understand that insurance will cover most of the damage to the furniture, so we ought to be in pretty good shape. And at least one of you needs to laugh at that. We spent half an hour developing
If not,
that
we'll just
line.
keep repeating it.
So, without further ado, we're going to announce tonight's Innovation Catalyst Seed Money Awards. And the first award goes to, drum roll please. Go ahead and open it. Announce it.
The first award is to COSI in the amount of $2,000.
All right. Photographer? Yeah. So if the COSI team could come over here to stage left to accept the award, we're going to shoot a photo.
Take it back on the We'll hold it open like a check.
Yeah, there we go. Our next award goes to
Project Noodle and Southside Early Learning with an award of $2,000.
Our next award goes to
Columbus Early Learning Centers with $7,000.
Okay, and then there were two. Our next award goes to
Maryhaven for $7,000.
So before we open the last envelope, who do you think it's going to be?
I don't know. The suspense is building.
Any guesses? All right. And the final award of the evening goes to
Zora's House. In the amount of $12,000.
And I lied. That is not the final award of the evening. You might recall a little bit of chatter earlier about the Audience Choice Award. So I think we're ready to reveal who our winner is tonight.
Someone really sealed this one. And the Audience Choice Award goes to Zora's House. In the amount of $1,000.
All right. So, I think that went well. So, thank you, Hope, for your help with the awards tonight. If you'd like to get to the bar before everybody else.
There's just coffee left. I should have gotten to the bar early.
That could be important. Thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
I'll turn off my light. Thank you, thanks. Okay, on behalf of the Partners of Cause Impact, I'd like to take just a moment or two to thank the folks without whom tonight would not have been possible. Starting with our friends at United Way of Central Ohio, Dana Booth, Valerie Ridgway, Solo Carla, Derek Coburn, Dana Stover, Michael Wilkos, Katie, and of course Lisa Cordes. I'd also like to thank the volunteers that came and made everything run so smoothly. I'd like to thank my wife, Karen, for serving as timer and helping us with the logistics. Our anniversary is coming up in another week. I hope we're still married. And our amazing strategic partners for an Innovation Catalyst from United Way of Central Ohio. Thank you all. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the AEP Foundation, Columbus Foundation, IGS Energy, United Way of Central Ohio, and probably most importantly, the teams in our 2019 cohort, Columbus Early Learning Centers, COSI, Mary Haven, Southside Early Learning, and Zora's House. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with each and every one of you. Finally, a big thanks to all of you in the audience tonight for supporting this endeavor. This concludes the action on stage. Please join us at the tables in the back. We've got coffee, just a little bit of dessert, and an opportunity to provide feedback and have further discussion with tonight's presenters. Thank you all, and have a great evening.